Today I'm going to present about the complementizer in Meeteilon, what actually complementizer follows. So the overview here is there would be the introduction, then Meeteilon complementizers and what actually definite description is, and the proposed structure. So first of all, I would like to introduce what actually complementizer is. So mostly in my data, I'll be talking only about the sentential complementizer. So historically and typologically, sentential complementizers are derived from say complementizers or pronouns. So and in Rurik 2001, it's been mentioned that complementizers actually carry some evidential information. So, and such type of complementizers depend on the types of verbs it selects. So, based on his observation, like evidentiality, there is an example in Jakarta about the complementizer being evidential. So the data here are not Tato Chulus not presidented. He said that the president would come, and the second one is Chubil, the complementizer. But actually, Chubil implies that the information in the complement clause is accorded a high degree of credibility. But Tato is about the doubt and disbelief. So comparing with Tato and Chubil, the complementizer, but they introduce the same complement clause. So Tato marks the unreliable source of information, whereas Chubil the reliable source. So similarly, in Meeteilon, um, we have two types of complementizers as referred to as factive complementizer, Haiba and Haina as non-factive by the earlier grammarian. So Mahakchapchare Haiba Aikangi, Mahakchapchare Haina Hai. So here the factive no verb selects the Haiba complementizer and the non-factive say selects Haina complementizer. But when it comes to some verbs like thaja, believe, hear, taba, and chingna, doubt, these verbs select two types of complementizers, haiba and haina. So when they select, they show the evidential difference in evidential information. So with thaja, believe, I believe that John read the book. John Alaric by Haiba or Haina Aithaze. So with when the clause is with Haiba complementizer, it increases the certainty of the proposition, whereas with Haina it expresses the uncertainty of the belief of the speaker. So similarly, with other verbs, uh, with cheer, taba, Tombolakani Haina or Haiba Aitai. So the information received by the hearer is from a reliable source in Haiba complement, but with Haina the information is vague. And without Chingna, Mahak Lairik by Haiba or Haina Chingnai, the translation would be with Haiba means I don't think that she read the book, and with Haina is I think that she read the book. So Chingna verb is already adopt is already a negative verb, but when it selects the Haiba complementizer, it negates it. And with the Haina complementizer, it actually brings out the positive information. So looking at this data, I would like to follow Rurik's remark that in English seems to mark a CP whose evidential information or status or truth value is more definite or presupposed. So in case of Meeteilon, it's the high word that gives the definite information. And in Galderian, given in Rurik 2001, with the verb of saying, interpretive differences arise that can be related to evidentiality, which is given below. So this is the context from Galderian. They all looked at each other across the table, but none of them dared to say anything. There was an uncomfortable silence. Finally, John said that the wine was corked. So the context implies that the propositional content of the CP complement, the wine was corked, is common knowledge shared by everyone in the table, and the absence of that marks the John's personal opinion. So referring to this, I would like to bring with the definite description. Uh, Definite descriptions refer to existing discourse reference. The complements of presupposed verbs like remembered, deny, forget, admit are actually definite DPs picking up a discourse reference in the common ground. So Kastner 2015 uses the theory where a discourse is conceptualized as a file containing different file cards. Each card corresponds to a discourse reference, and these references make up the uh, conversational common ground. So, referring to this, uh, mm, referring to this, I would like to classify the verbs because complement clause selecting predicates are often divided into different classes based on certain aspects of the embedded clauses interpretation. Earlier, we have already seen traditionally this factive and non-factive has been classified in Kiparsky and also in Hooper and Thompson. And later, Cattell and Haggerty also classified according to the discourse information. So the according to Cattell, as given in Moulton and Britain 2018, verbs are divided into three classes: volunteered, tense, non-factive, which is non-factive actually, and it um, introduces a new idea. Means embedded clauses introduces new idea. For example, Alice believes, said, assumed, thought, claimed, supposed, that, drawn, called. So these are the verbs, non-factive and volunteered tense verbs, which introduces a new idea. And the non-tense perfective embedded clauses refers to a fact. For example, Alice remembered, regretted, knows, forget, realized that Ron called. And the last one is the response tense verb. It where the embedded clause refers to a familiar idea. So the verbs given here are agreed, admitted, confirmed, denied, accepted. So based on this, uh, Meiteilon verbs like Meiteilon complementizer, hyper refers to a fact. So in Meiteilon, it is hyper complementizer which marks the evidential information status as definite or presupposed, unlike Heine which has the meaning of like that or this way. So besides this, the inherently effective verbs will always select hyper complementizer. So John analytic by Haiba a Kami or a Kawi means I know or forgot that John read the book. Here Haina is not compatible. John analytic by Haiba Chummi. This is a sentential subject construction. So it is true that John read the book. Here also Haiba is compatible and Haina is not possible. So these are inherently effective verbs when you deny the whole clause like Jonah, Larikpai, Haiba, Aikhangi, Azubu, Paramdre, but didn't really read. This is not okay when you actually negate the clause. We cannot negate the embedded clause in case of active verb. And Haina introduces a new idea. So John Lyric Pari Haina I think that John is reading the book and Mary Lyric Pari Haina John Hai. John said that Mary is reading the book. Here when we negate the clause, John Lyric Pari Haina Adubu Paramdre, but didn't really read is okay. So we can actually negate the embedded clause selected by the non-factive verb. So I relate to the work of Kastner 2015 and Albritton and Moulton 2018. where the complement clause is taken as a definite description. In case of Meteilon is the Hyber clause. So as mentioned in Albriton and Moulton 2018, cross-linguistics investigations of clausal embedding uh, have observed that complements to verbs classified as non-tense, active or response tense often exhibit morphosyntactic properties suggestive of nominal structure. So Moulton and Albriton based their work in Korean where they actually analyzed the data which uh, uh, they claimed that proposition definite description of a discourse event carries definite is actually a DP. So, but according to the terminology, some other people who have already worked on, like D. Cuba and Rogti and Hegman, they termed the clause as referential propositions, and D. Cuba 2007 termed it as familiar, and Kastner as presuppositional, and Humer as given. But all the analysis were on syntactic analysis, which is not compatible with other some other languages. But here, Moulton and Albriton showed in Korean analysis, giving the discourse context, which I am using in Meteilon discourse context. This is actually taken from Moulton's work, Moulton and Albriton's work. So the discourse actually is given here to check whether Hyber really refers to an already given information. So I take the example of the verb thaza where it selects only where it selects both the complementizers. So here the context is given. Somebody said A said I like Pabal Mapanda Sanaruge. I finished reading. Can I play outside? But B replied that no. But again A replied, don't you believe me? Nang ay bu thaza dabra. So here the answer from B1 would be ay nang nalarik pa ba lore haiba thazay. I believe that you finished your homework, but it's dinner time. Adubu hojikti mugdangi chak matamni. Uh, and the other possible interpretation reply would be ay nang nalarik pa ba lore hai na thazay. Adubu hojikti mugdangi chak matamni. So I believe that you finished your homework, but it's dinner time. Since belief is a non-factive, it selects a familiar hyper clause where the embedded clause refers to a familiar idea. So in both the contexts, when the information is given, we can use the two types of clause introduced by Haiba and Haina. But when the information is not given, shared without the given information, just a question like Johnny Ladik Paba Loire Loikrabra. Has Johnny finished his homework? Johnny Larik Paba Loiramlani Haina Thazay. I believe that Johnny must have finished his homework. And the another reading is Johnny Larik Paba Loiramlani Haiba Ay Thazay. Here with Haiba is somewhat not okay when the information is not introduced, but with Haina it's perfectly okay. This shows that Haina complementizer refers to a new idea when the information is not given. So it shows that Hyber needs a prior assertion of utterance imposing a familiarity requirement where ber is the nominalizer. The prior assertion of the sentence should be familiar to the attitude holder of belief. So we can see that belief thaza is a volunteer tense non-factive verb, but it also behaves like response tense familiar as the embedded clause refer to a familiar idea when selected by Hyber. So Hagarty also suggests that this familiarity requirement is satisfied when such complements express common knowledge or a point of current discussion in the reported discourse. So those are the I've only provided from the context of Thaja verb to check whether Hyper really refers to a given information and Haina to indefinite information. So when we checked with the complementizer in Kiparsky 1970, that cannot be deleted in clausal complements of active verbs. But it seems like in Magellan, irrespective of the activity, complementizer is um, can be optional. But the deletion of the complementizer hyper changes the axis of the source of information, although the presuppositionality is preserved because of the inherent nature of the effective verb. So another example with Thaja verb is Jo nalarik pai haiba ai or haina ai thajai. Jo nalarik pai ai thajai. When both the complementizer is absent, there is a pause. There seems like to be a pause in the embedded clause, and ai Jo nalarik pai thajai. So when there is a pause, but actually the interpretation could mean the haina complement clause. When complementizer is absent, there is no prior given information, and it is the interpretation of the Haina clause where there is no definite information but just the speaker's belief. So definite clause as DP as a definite clause. So it has traditionally been assumed that factive complement clause is nominal DP and non-factive as CP. This means presupposed predicates embed definite description which refers to a discourse referent in CG that is common ground. So Kastner adapting from Kiparsky and Kiparsky claims that there is a definite determiner in English, the fact that, and in Hebrew they offer definite determiner which makes the clause factive. So in Meeteilon, hyper acts as referential, presuppositional, marking the clause as definite, and the complementizer itself is nominal in nature, where ver is the nominalizer, and the determiner she is attached to it. So here, in order to see whether see that Hebrew J is actually a factive determiner. Here is the data given here. He explained that the building collapsed. The complementizer J, say, is the complementizer in 15. But when J is introduced in the data, this is the definite determiner, which turns the clause into a factive clause. So similarly in English, the fact that introduced overt definite determiner which Kastner termed so Bill remembers the fact that John stole the cookies, but he didn't. You cannot negate it because of the fact. So Bill remembers that John stole the cookies, but he didn't. Here, the fact is termed as overt definite determiners in Kastner 2015. Both these English and Hebrew determiners are blocks the movement of WH questions, which makes it as an island. So what do you remember? The fact that Denny stole, you cannot move the WH phrase. And what do you remember? The fact that John stole. So similarly in English, you cannot move the WH out of the clause. So this entire clause taken as TP is an island, which makes it somewhat like a complex noun phrase clause. The role of C in Meiteilon, C is the determiner attached to hyper definite uh, complementizer. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you please wind it up in another 2 minutes so that we can have a couple of questions after the presentation? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am, I'll do that. Tomuna narik pai haibasi ay thazai. So I believe or know the fact that Tomba read the book, but actually here I have translated it as the fact, but Haiba already introduced a familiar clause or a fact clause in case of no. But C, the role of C determiner is just to refer back to what have been said, but not actually a factive, which we can see here in with belief verb. It doesn't turn the belief into affective verb because we cannot negate it. I'm using the spectral or deictic marker rule, which negates the thaza, but it when you use it with a verb, it negates the entire clause, which means that belief is actually a non-factive verb, but the presence of C with complementizer doesn't either turns the clause into a factive clause. So I have put up some data here just to see that that movement is not possible out of the Meiteilon complement clause. Yeah, what do you believe the fact that Tomba stole? It cannot be questioned actually with the verb. And what do you know the fact that Tomba stole? Here, Tombana kari hurali haibasi khange. Here, I don't know with some other speakers, but when I tried with some speakers, it's not even possible to ask the question. So, karibu nang tombana hurali haina thazage. With the verb, I tried to show the movement here, but with the focus marker, it could be possible, but somewhat when I checked with other speakers, it's not grammatical. Another one is with the think verb. Karibu nang tombana hurali haina khange. The wave form would be nang tombana kari hurali haina khange. So this seems to be fine. So in case of non-factive like think, the verbs it seems like the clause have a complex structure, which earlier in many theories claimed that non-factive clauses are more have more complex structure than the factive clause. So based on all this, Kastner proposed three types of structure. One is selected embedded non-propositional clauses selected by think, believe, and the verb select on CP complement clause, and the other two is selected embedded presuppositionals like the regrade, deny. They select the DP complements to the verb, and overt definite presuppositionals like the that the factive the fact and the Hebrew che selects overt definite DP. So this is the structure given by Kastner for English, and here they remember the fact or claim that John stole the cookies. This is possible for both Hebrew and English, where the BP selects the DP and it actually selects the NP where it is an adjunct according to them. So based on this, Meiteilon has I propose that there could be like three structure. One is with Heine. I termed it as minus referential because it introduces new ideas. Hyper with plus referential, it refers to a given information, and Hyper C, which is like overt determiner, but actually C here doesn't function as effective determiner. So the possible structure for Meiteilon is for minus referential Heine. I have put up here with with verbs like think and.
Okay, Alfina, we have to wind up the presentation. Could you please go quickly to the conclusion?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
So these are the possible structures